Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com. He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. Of course, it is brought to you by plainscoffee.com. Go to plainscoffee.com and enter the promo code BRAVES for 10% off of your frou-frou coffee that you can get delivered straight to your door. Actually, they have regular stuff. So they have tea as well. A lot of people don't realize that. Some people
Earl
are
Grey,
not.
chai, some good stuff.
Exactly. So head on over there and check that out, and we'll talk more about that here momentarily. But first, one thing that you did an article on that I absolutely love, the headline completely got me, and that is the Braves basically being projected to lead all of baseball in home runs. And there's a very good reason why that could be the case. And you make the point in the article because I don't think that your home run leader from last year actually reached his full potential because of everywhere they were moving him around throughout the season.
Yeah, I had some fun with that headline because, the headline, if you haven't seen the article yet, bravetoday.com, go find it. Braves hitter receives surprising prediction to lead baseball in homers. Yep. And Ronald Acuna Jr. is projected via Fangraphs to lead baseball in home runs with 43. And when you think about it, you're like, okay, 43 is not a ton, but he hit 41 in last year, he hit 41 in 19. He could hit 43 easily. Yeah, that's fine. And then you think about, it's wait, Olson hit 54 last year.
I know.
Why is Matt Olson not on this list?
Why is he being left off? Are they expecting a huge slump this year?
Exactly. And so I dove into it and I looked and they're they have him projected for 37 home runs and a 260 batting average, the 515 slugging. And I'm like, wait a second, this is weird. Why is his projection so low? And that's what the article became was, I think they got this wrong. So for context, last year, Matt Olson batted 283 with a 604 slugging and 54 homers. And I think the projections, I think I figured out what's going on with the projections. And I think they're looking too much into past performance and expected stats, right? So Zips takes a multi-year look. And so they're looking at his 2022 season, his first year in Atlanta. And we've talked about this in the context of Sean Murphy recently, about how guys struggle oftentimes in that first year in a new team. He hit 34 home runs that year with a 240 batting average and a 477 slugging. So if you're pulling his last 2 years of production, you have a below standard year from him right there, right? And then if you give too much weight to early in the year last year, you surprised me with a question on here early in the season, and it was, who finishes the year with more strikeouts, Spencer Strider or Matt Olson?
Yep.
And apparently the Braves watched that show because 2 days later they moved him to cleanup. So the stats through June 14th, when he was batting second in the lineup, Olson batted 228 with a 30% strikeout rate, 29.9%. And he hit 18 homers in 68 games. The next day when he moved to cleanup, he batted 324 down the stretch with a slugging of almost 700. He hit 36 homers in 94 games, so better than one every third game. And he struck out only 18% of the time. And so if you look at these projections, it's obvious to me that they're saying, okay, the expected numbers weren't as good as his actual, so we're going to assume he backs up a little bit. And then they looked too much at 22 in the first part of 23 and not what he did down the stretch from the cleanup spot where he destroyed MLB. If he batted in that spot the entire year, I mean, he hits 60-something home runs. If he bats cleanup the entire season and plays the same in those 162 games that he played in 94. I mean, it feels like if there's anybody on this roster that you're going to say, yeah, he's going to outperform that projection, it's Matt Olson, right?
Yeah, it's got to be, because the fact that they took him back to getting back in the 30s with his home runs, I'm sitting there going, okay, go from 54 to, what'd you say, 37 is what?
37, yeah.
And so I think they call Chipper out of the booth and start working on various things. And I mean, that would be.
If he's on a 37 homer pace at the end of May, like there's a crisis in Atlanta.
Yes.
Like there's like provided he's healthy. Like there's like you said, they're calling Chipper out of the booth. They're doing all kind of stuff to figure out what's going on, right? But
yeah,
like,
they got
we know what
Dansby
works
coming
now.
down from Chicago and walking around with sage and everything, like trying to scare the demons away. It's that is shocking. And you make a good point. And don't get me wrong, Ronald could have more.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
He
that's
easily could have hit more home runs than that.
Yeah. And so that's another thing that gets me is I think it's between the two of them as far as that race is concerned, at least. And I don't know about for Major League Baseball, but definitely for the National League home run title. I think that both of them are going to make a run for that. And as you said, I mean, Olson seems to have found a spot now at that cleanup spot. Mm-hmm. And he's getting an opportunity with the guys that are ahead of him, as well as a couple of guys behind him. As you and I've talked about, this lineup from top to bottom, pitchers are it's one of those things, they're getting to the fourth and fifth innings, and they are just running out of bullets to throw at this particular lineup. Yep. And lo and behold, if they jump on a pitcher in the first two innings, then all of a sudden they get to dip into people's bullpens, and it gets even worse for them. So, and I know we're painting a rosy picture, but seriously, to go from 54 down to 37 is just a little bit shocking to me, especially when, as you said, it looks like they thought, okay, that year was an anomaly. That's never going to happen again. Let's be more realistic. Because I told you,
I've said this from the beginning. That's a significant jump, though. That's a significant drop.
It is.
If you were to say 54 to 48, 45, maybe even, that's one thing. But 37.
Oh, I was even thinking 54 to 44. That's about as far back as I would go.
Mid-40s tops. I'd be comfortable saying, yeah, that could happen. But like 37, as long as he's healthy, that feels incredibly unlikely.
And if that were to happen, even going to 44, I would attribute that not necessarily to a drop in average and a pickup in strikeouts. I think he'd get a lot of intentional walks on times that we went 3 up, 3 down, and they decided to put him on, or nobody got on ahead of him, so they put him on so they could get outnumbered. They get a forced play with him at first because he's slow.
Yeah, he got intentionally walked only 8 times last year. That's it.
See, and I think that would go. If he goes down in home runs, I think that literally triples. That number triples this year.
If Marcell Ozuna struggles, because that's who was behind him for most of the year. If Ozuna struggles and you don't reliably have a number 5 hitter that can protect him, I think that's the situation where you see his intentional walks go up. But like Ozuna put up 40 behind him. You can't walk Olson to get to Ozuna. That's the hard part about this lineup is you don't have a break. Right? You don't, what's your break? Or Orlando Arcia, who was an all-star last year? Like, what's your break? Arcia and Kelenic is your break. That's
Who has, as I call Arcia, I call it hidden power, because every now and then he'd just poke a home run that nobody was thinking would happen, and all of a sudden he'd do it. So
it's like a check swing, and it goes out to the left field corner. It's like, I don't get it.
And then other times he swings out of his shoes and can't get it out of the infield. So it's just you never know what guy you're going to get. But seriously, I mean, go to Olson, and I believe you're right. I believe that they got it wrong. Now, there's a chance they can get it right because I still think that Acuna has got – I think as good a year as he had last year with his stolen bases and home runs and anything from defensive statistics that went along with it and the arm that he would show off from time to time, I still think he has a better year in him. Does Ronald Acuna Jr. So he could lead the team and league and Major League Baseball in home runs. But with Olson starting out in the cleanup spot, if Ozuna doesn't start out batting 135 like he did last year. And
83 was the low point of that last year.
And so if he starts out hitting 220, then there's no way, because they're not, as you said, they're not going to want to put him on for Ozuna to take him 450 feet deep. So they're going to have to pitch to Matt Olson in order to try to get somebody out, especially since they're hoping maybe he can just catch the top of the ball and they can throw him out easily at first. So it should be interesting. I guess the number, looking at the arc on what you said, I'm just fascinated that they went from 54 to 37.
It's just, it's wild to me. And it's, I'm nothing against the Fangraphs folks. They're incredibly smart. Yep. They get a lot of this stuff right. It's just one of those, being national writers, they sometimes don't necessarily have all of the context and have as good of an understanding of what's going on with the team, the lineup and all that than we do. And so this is one of those instances where I think that they're going to end up being wrong at the end of the season, provided that he's healthy. Again, there is that caveat that as long as he's healthy, I think he's going to surpass that number easily, but we'll see what happens.
I told you, and I'll still stick with it. I'll stick with it this year too. I need 260 and 40 home runs out of him. That's all I need from him. Everything else should take care of itself. And he exceeded those expectations last year. I think he exceeds those expectations again this year. But according to FanGraph, apparently they don't see him exceeding my expectations. They see him going below mine.
But hey,
I also don't like that.
Ronald leading the league in homers. That's cool.
Yeah, we'll take that. Yeah, your leadoff guy leading the league in home runs. Yeah, I'll take that as well.
There you go.
It's brought to you by plainscoffee.com. Promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. Go check out the cinnamon hazelnut. You got Cinnabon, caramel, pumpkin spice, even have teas if you're not a coffee guy. Straight to your doorstep. Don't roast the beans until you have your order ready and in the pipeline. Every order roasted and shipped the same day. Shipping freshly roasted coffee to customers around the world. Experience the goodness of freshly roasted coffee beans delivered straight to your doorstep by going to plainscoffee.com and entering the promo code BRAVES for your 10% off. Lindsay, also one thing that came about from somebody else, and so we grabbed it and ran with it because I've heard this from more than one media outlet. It's been more through like Twitter instead of articles, but apparently it was a Bleacher Report that said this. Yeah. They are saying that Atlanta has a depth issue. I think that's low-hanging fruit because I think they're saying that because Atlanta probably hasn't filled out their 40-man at this point. So they're just assuming that there's a depth issue there right now. But with some of the minor league contracts that have been signed and some FAs that are still out there, I don't know that that's the case when opening day rolls around.
Yeah, like in the article from Bleacher Report was one of those. They were going to all the World Series favorites, and they were looking at, the deficiencies of the 40-man roster. And for Atlanta, they said that the biggest issue was just a lack of experience on the bench, which on one hand, yeah, that's an issue. On the other hand, like that's the biggest problem you've got is that. Like that's a pretty good place to be in. But it's kind of what you touched on. So much of Atlanta's potential depth is on minor league deals. And so like they talked about your 3 bench players on the roster because you're not counting Travis d'Arnaud as one of your bench players really. You have Luis Guillorme and then 2 outfielders, Forrest Wall and JP Martinez. And it's like, well, Wall and Martinez, they're like, they have a combined 59 plate appearances in the minors. Right. And then, and so it's like, okay, like technically you're right. It's just and I had some framing issues with the article or with their article when I saw it. And it's like, okay, they mentioned how Kelenich's not appeared more than 105 games in a season. And it's like, well, yeah, but 2 of those, the team chose to option him to the minors. And then the third one was a fluky injury. It was a dumb injury. He kicked a cooler. It's not like he has a recurring medical issue. He kicked a cooler. He says he's learned from it, so it doesn't happen again.
And if he hasn't, the Braves have decided they're going to elevate all coolers, so you have to reach up in order to get them to keep that from happening.
We're going to wrap them all in foam. We're good. But then, like they talked about Wall and Martinez having a combined 59 plate appearances. Well, that's fine. But Guillorme has 823. You didn't mention that.
Right.
And then going off of the 40-man roster, it's like David Fletcher, who is going to be your backup shortstop if you need one. He's got over 2,000 plate appearances. So, like, you have some experience. And then even if you look at just the outfield, it's like, yeah, those 2 outfielders, not that experienced. Jordan Luplow, I don't know.
Luplow.
Jordan's mama, please let me know in the comments. Jordan has over 1,000 plate appearances in his career. Eli White has another 400 and something. And then it's the whole thing of like Atlanta doesn't really use the backups unless somebody gets hurt, right? I mean, there was a stretch last year, like May 24th through August 11th. Atlanta played the exact same guys at first, second, third, short, center, and right, and DH for 66 straight games.
Yep.
Like, they just didn't use backups. And now they were rotating Rosario and Pilar in left. They were rotating the catcher. You'll rotate catchers this year, especially with Sean Murphy having issues with the heat. But theoretically, for Kelenic, you won't have to rotate for him. And so there's not necessarily a need to have high-level backups. He floated the idea of, like, signing Whit Merrifield, who's going to want double-digit millions. And it's like, you don't need a guy like that when your starters play every single day. They want to play all 162. You don't need a high-level backup like that unless somebody gets hurt. And then if you just did not want to survive with Fletcher or Guillorme playing third every day or whatever, you could just go out and make a trade at that point if you need to, but why use assets now? He actually suggested trading from the bullpen to get a player from St. Louis. I'm like, why give up assets now for
Braves
something
fans
you
would
don't necessarily
freak out.
need? Yeah.
Braves fans would freak out. They already think we don't have enough pitching. That's the last thing they need to do is take a bullpen guy and send him off somewhere.
Exactly.
And this is Snitker's MO too, keeping the same guys out there. He leaves those reserves on the bench for pinch running purposes, for double switches, so you can move the lineup around late in the game. And so he doesn't. This sounds like we're just expecting everybody to play injury-free all year, but he doesn't put a lineup together in hopes that he can platoon it. He did with left, but everybody else, that's his expectation. And that's their expectation. I mean, especially the Acuna Juniors and the Olsons of the world. And even Murphy, even though he got tired last year, he still said, I need to get back in a rhythm, start catching me every day. Like these guys they want to play every day. Ozzy, freak injuries. Also, pitchers quit hitting Ozzy. He's the smallest guy on the field. It always ends up being something like that hurts him. Yeah. And so, as I said last year, I said, quit hitting our catchers and quit hitting Ozzy. I don't know why that's a thing, but apparently those two positions are the only people that ever get hit. And Acuna every now and then, but he's all padded up. I think a lot of that was a little drama to go along with it. But
Olson has not missed a game since 2021. He missed like a handful of games early in the 21 season. And then since then, he's not missed a game in 2.5 seasons. Like, you don't need a backup first baseman on the roster.
Right.
Austin Riley missed 3 last year.
I was going to say, you don't need a backup third baseman either. He's missing 3 because he's taking some time. It's just one of those deals where he needed a break.
He missed 3. If I remember right, it was late in the year. He was nicked up. And they did not let him play when he wanted to.
Yes.
And so because they had already broken the seal on that, then the day after they won the division, they gave him that day off as well. And it's he wasn't going to miss any. And then he had like a little minor, he was sick. I think it was. He was sick and they sent him home and didn't let him stay at the ballpark. And that's why he missed a game. So that was the first one. And then from there, they were able to give him some rest because he had missed a game. But it's just, you don't need high-level backups on this team unless somebody gets injured. Like that's where you are.
You need fillers. You don't need, you mentioned it just a minute ago, you don't need $10+ million guys as backups. And so why not wait? You've got time. Spring training's coming up. You'll get to see where the cards fall with other players and other teams and minor league contracts and who doesn't make rosters. And you still got a ton of free agents that are still sitting out there. And at some point, you've said it best, they're going to get antsy with their agent and they're going to be like, I have got to be in a uniform somewhere. So figure it out. Let's, the rumor is Trevor Bauer, he came out and said he'll play for league minimum. Somebody like you just wonder how many guys are out there. They're not the minimum type deal, but how many guys, when it gets midway through spring training and nothing's happened, where they go, hey, find a spot. And if we got to take a cut in money, it's just my job to try to be better and see if we can, grab a 1-year deal and make it better next year. So
guys get cut at the end of spring training because they're on minor league deals. And oftentimes veterans have a clause in that contract with a certain date. If you don't get put on the active roster by that date, you can go to free agency. And so
didn't Pilar have that last year with the Braves?
He did, yeah. If Atlanta didn't promote him, he was going to be able to hit free agency and go find another team. And so Atlanta promoted them, and he played in half of the games. You have extra 40-man roster spots for a reason, but you can tell Atlanta doesn't want to spend money on the backup. They traded Nicky Lopez when he was going to be owed like $4 million. They were like, that's too expensive for us. He might play once a week. We don't need to pay for that.
Correct. If they're not going to take a $4 million guy, they're darn sure not going to go grab a $10 million guy for him to sit on the bench and be a rah-rah and come in late and maybe run or do a double switch. So,
listen, y'all can pay me league minimum. I'll come on the bench and be a rah-rah guy, honestly.
Yeah, that's what Trevor Bauer's wanting to do, so you never know if that may happen. So.
Charlie Culberson didn't play for a month when he got called up.
Right.
He was on the bench for a month, and they told him when they called him up, you're not going to play.
Right.
And he just wanted a chance to be on the team, and so he moved up.
Yeah, a lot of those guys will look and take that shot just to be able to have an opportunity to prove themselves as well. Plus, everybody loves Charlie and Charlie's hair to go along with it. I promise at one point, we're not going to do it today. We will get to Drake Baldwin. We will talk about the next Brian McCann. It's almost like he's still taking his time in the minors, and we're going to just keep keeping him there. It's been brought to you by Plains Coffee, plainscoffee.com, promo code BRAVES. Get your 10% off. He's Lindsay Crosby. He's got a ton of info at bravestoday.com, as well as you can check us out on Twitter. You can check us out on Instagram and all the other social media platforms. Facebook, by the way, some of you still Facebook folks. We got a ton of followers on Facebook, and all the articles get posted there as well. As always, Lindsay, I greatly appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks, buddy.